Welcome back, everybody, to another episode of the Jay Stevens Podcast. This is episode 62, dedicated to a man that put up 62 points in a game 6 separate times. A Los Angeles Laker great, Mr. Wilt Chamberlain. And as always, thank you for listening and downloading to another episode of the podcast. On today's episode, we have Connor Burgan of the Three Bro Sports Podcast coming on and helping me preview the Super Bowl. Now, we talk about the Super Bowl, previewing that. We talk about podcasting. This was also recorded on Sunday, this past Sunday, the day that Kobe Bryant died in a helicopter crash. That's fresh in our minds. We opened our conversation with that topic. I would feel like I would not be doing my job if I glossed over maybe the biggest story in sports that we'll see this year. Unexpected, shocking. People are still, to this day, texting me and texting each other and putting posts on social media about how this is just different. They're in disbelief. And things about how people still can't believe or wrap their heads around Kobe Bryant at 41 years old no longer being here. But it's not just Kobe. It was Kobe plus 8 other people that lost their lives in the helicopter crash. Unexpected. Nobody thought it would happen. And we're all left here to just think about and cherish the life that Kobe lived, his daughter Gigi lived, and the other people that were on that helicopter. We're here to cherish and remember their lives and what they did while they were here on God's green earth. Connor is a young man, and I won't tell you his age. I won't say much about his background. But when you hear him, when you hear us start talking, when you hear him start going deep into sports, deep into the things that he loves, you're like, man, this guy is way smarter and way wiser than most people are at his age. Also, I know this is a little bit late notice. It's something that popped in my head just a couple days ago. We're going to be having a special podcast episode on Saturday, all about Kobe Bryant with your voice. If you're a person that wants to leave a voice message about something that Kobe Bryant, you'll remember him for, or something what Kobe Bryant means to you, click the link on Anchor, anchor.fm/Jay Stevens Podcast. Click the link that says message. You can leave a 60-second voice message about Kobe Bryant, what he means to you, something you'll remember him for. And then and then once you hit send, that goes directly to me. I'm going to be having an episode with your voice on Saturday morning coming out about what Kobe Bryant means to you. You hear my voice all the time. I had a question that came to me that I'll actually be answering on that same episode in a 60-second time slot as well. But I want people to be able to get their thoughts out, get what Kobe Bryant meant to them, because Kobe Bryant's death reached generations. There are kids out there that never saw Kobe play, but they feel like they're missing a part of them. There are people out here that saw greats over generations and generations of great NBA players, and this one hit harder with them. There are people that are of my generation that as soon as they heard the news, they were in disbelief, they were in shock, and then once again, they didn't want to believe it. He's a big part of them. So I said, why not? I know my voice is the voice of the podcast, but why not give a platform to you, the listener? Anchor.fm/Jay Stevens Podcast. Go on there, look it up on your phone, look it up on the computer, leave a 60-second voice message about what Kobe Bryant meant to you or what you'll remember about Kobe Bryant. Send that to me. I want those. I want to try and get it done by Friday evening so that, so I'm not trying to rush to get it done Saturday morning. But get that sent over. I'm going to be having that special episode for Kobe on Saturday morning, released with your voice, with your thoughts about Kobe Bryant and what he means to you. So without further ado, let's go ahead and take a trip to Magnolia, Delaware. I had no idea that was a city, but apparently it is. And listen to my fun conversation with Mr. Connor Burgan of the Three Bro Sports Podcast. Hey, Connor, welcome to the podcast.
Hey, it's great to be on. Thanks for having me. It's nice again to hop on other podcasts. I mean, being a host is great and all, but it's nice to be a guest somewhere else. But thank you for having me.
Yeah, no problem, man. Today is Sunday. We're recording this on Sunday evening, and the news broke earlier today that Kobe Bryant died in a helicopter crash. When I heard the news, I was shook, didn't want to believe it, literally thought it was fake news. Then my friend that told me about it literally said TMZ they don't do fake news. That's not their thing. TMZ broke it as soon as it happened. Well, a few hours after it happened. I heard the accident happened Sunday morning. But what were your first thoughts when you heard about Kobe Bryant's sudden death on Sunday?
Well, it's sad to say when I first heard it or when I saw it on Twitter, I had to check when it was Adrian Wojnarowski who reported it. I had to make sure that there was an actual check mark next to the name. That's a real account, because I was in sudden disbelief of losing one of the greats in today's game. I mean, I didn't get to grow up to watch some of the greats back in the early 1900s, but for this to happen, it turns the NBA upside down of truly losing a legend way too early. He still had so much to provide, even as a coach for his daughter's AAU team. There's just so much that it's just mind-boggling that something as awful as this would happen.
Yeah, man, it's different. Kobe Bryant was literally the first player that I fell in love with, and I was able to watch him throughout his entire career. He came in the league. I was like 7 or 8 years old when he came in. There's a skinny kid coming out of Pennsylvania, gets drafted, then he gets traded on draft day to the Lakers. Then basically the rest is history. 98 All-Star game. I watched that. I had that recorded on VHS, and I literally watched that over and over and over and over. Not just because it was MJ's quote unquote last All-Star game before he came back, but it was Kobe Bryant. I wanted to watch Kobe. I cared about Kobe. I had a fro, and it wasn't because of Kobe, but Kobe had a fro, so other people started having changing their hairdo because of Kobe. Other people were saying Kobe when they're throwing things into the trash can. And Kobe Bryant's impact, not just when he was in the NBA playing, but also after the league. I mean, his impact on the current players that we watch right now, the NBA, in college, and even those that are still in high school and still growing up. Kobe Bryant has a great impact. Not just NBA, but also WNBA players. There's a young lady on the Oregon Ducks basketball team, that was in shock and disbelief after the game. She won. She beat Oregon State on Sunday, but then all of a sudden afterwards, she has to talk about one of her good friends who died suddenly in a helicopter accident. What kind of impact did Kobe Bryant have on your life?
You know, so as a Sacramento Kings fan, I think that's already saying enough of having to watch him play. And as much as you always have the hate relationship of you respect the heck out of him. He is a true professional. He's one of the greatest to ever play, and you're watching greatness every single time he steps on that court. It's kind of funny. When the Kings built their new arena, they didn't allow Kobe Bryant shoes. They wanted to start a new legacy. But watching him was just it was spectacular getting to see him 4 times a year on the local game. And as much as you always had that, oh man, I hate that Kobe keeps putting 45 up against us. He's hit buzzer beaters left and right. He taught us a lot. He really did. He taught us about the Mamba mentality. And some people may say it was a little crazy, but I think his work ethic was just far none. I mean, he was waking up at 4 a.m. in the morning, taking over 1,000 shots, he thousands upon thousands every single day, and that's on game days. Like, his work ethic is truly remarkable, and it sets a real he was a great example for the younger ones who really wanted to take this game seriously. You have to give it all if you really want the game to love you back.
You do. You have to give your all. If you don't give your all, not just in the game, but also the game of life and what you do personally. Us being podcast hosts, we have different thoughts in our head. Of course, you're doing it on a different realm. I'm solo. You're with a couple of your friends, so it's a different dynamic. But we still have to devote time, devote thoughts, make sure that we're saying the right things, that the things that we research, that we're researching the right thing. When it comes to stats, be very, very specific with stats, because someone that averages 19 points per game is different than someone that averages 9 points per game. Literally leaving that one off is very, very different. So we have to utilize an aspect of the Mamba mentality in what we do. But Kobe Bryant, he didn't just do it in just basketball. I mean, he won an Oscar, New York Times bestseller. He even going to coaching. I'm sure coaching was about basketball, but he's impacted so many people's lives and just friendships that are aside from basketball. And I've seen all throughout the day of where teams, after the opening tip-off, they're taking a 24-second shot clock violation. Even some teams go a step further, taking an 8-second backcourt violation. I thought that I saw something I saw on Twitter, just an idea someone had. Do you think that an immediate retiring of the 8 and 24 across the league would be proper at this time?
Yes, I actually do believe that in does hurt because I did drop $90 on a Buddy Hield jersey. But that's besides the fact of, yes, that is the proper and professional thing for the NBA to do. And for his legacy and what he's done to the game of basketball in itself, I mean, he created the first real dynasty that had everybody talking of him and Shaq together. You thought that was crazy. And then he added Karl Malone, Gary Payton to the mix. I mean, like, he really created all these great teams. This player is – you're not going to see another guy with his mentality and his style of play. You're just not. It's the most proper thing to do.
Yeah, I'm right there with you, man. I'm kind of amazed that, not trying to knock the league or anything like that, but I'm kind of amazed that the Bulls and the Miami Heat are the only ones to retire Michael Jordan's 23. Players are still wearing it. LeBron wears 23. People do that because of MJ. Now, maybe this is a time to say, hey, we want to retire Michael Jordan's 23 as well. Hey, so be it. I don't care. But paying the proper respects to the greats in the league, it's what's needed. It's what's right. I believe, and it's crazy. It just hit my head. The NBA just lost David Stern, former commissioner of the NBA. The NBA family is going through a lot right now, one death and then another, kind of bookending the month of January. You never like to see this stuff happen. It's a part of life, and it makes us really cherish and somewhat respect life, and every moment matters. Every moment counts. Don't take for granted the people that you love, the people that you live with, your friends. Never take for granted anything like that, because you never know when you're going to have your last breath on earth. You being a Kings fan, you mentioned it. I wasn't going to, but what was one thing? Is there a game that sticks out of your mind saying Kobe came in and Kobe did this against my team and I don't like it, or what? Just pick one game, then go for it.
There's a lot, Jay. Let's just get that going. But the first ever game I ever watched as a true Sacramento Kings fan that I can remember, January 1st, 2010, Kings-Lakers Staples Center, where the Kings were up basically the whole game, and Kobe Bryant had his fadeaway three-point shot in the corner right over Sergio Rodriguez to win the game. And I only can remember that because the first thing I said, I turned back to my dad saying, are the Kings ever going to win a game? And I meant that seriously. I wasn't even joking, sadly. But that's one of the big ones that stuck out to me. But starting to learn the history of the Sacramento Kings, because granted, when it was the Kings-Lakers, I wasn't even a full year old yet. Or maybe I was one. Maybe I was one. But still, I didn't understand what this rivalry really was. I didn't know what the Robert Horry shot was, the Game 6 controversy. But still, it was all the Kings' heart was always in the Kings-Lakers series. That was the biggest game. But I think the fadeaway three was a big one. One of their supposed final games before they moved off to Anaheim, supposedly. Kobe Bryant hit it was a jumper to send the game overtime. They ended up beating the Kings. It was kind of a sour farewell because a lot of fans are moving to Anaheim. But, I mean, Jay, there's way too many games that I could bring up about Kobe Bryant coming out and torching my Kings.
One game that I remember very well, very vividly, the 2000. Now I'm older than you, but 2000 NBA Finals. The Pacers were playing. I forget which game it was. I just remember the Pacers were at home. Shaq gets fouled out. Kobe Bryant, the Lakers going to overtime, and all of a sudden Kobe Bryant literally just has this look on his face like, I got this. Let me do what I do. I got this. And I'm sure in a lot of people's minds, they go back, I think it was his first or second trip to the playoffs where he was airballing shots in the playoffs. I know it was against the Spurs for sure. I think against the Jazz as well, where this young kid is taking big-time shots, and he has no idea what he's doing. Kobe believed he was meant for that moment when nobody else believed it. Nobody else knew who. He's just a skinny kid that came to the league with a lot of confidence. But that series, that game alone, where I remember Kobe Bryant and he was making big-time defensive stops as well. I'm like, man, this kid's special. Now, I was already sold on him, but that just showed that put in my mind saying, hey, this guy's he's going to go places in the NBA. I already love him. Other people already love him. Other people are going to follow him throughout his entire career, but this guy is very, very special. You mentioned it at the beginning of when we got on about you being a podcast host. I've been listening to your podcast Oh my! I think it was 2 or 3 weeks after you started it, because you messaged me on Twitter, and then I saw all of a sudden, no, there's this kid that started a podcast, and all of a sudden it's called Three Bros Sports. I'm like, okay, this is kind of like a little laid back style of a title, a laid back way to have fun and talk about sports. Why did you start it? And then also talk a little bit about TV Delmarva as well.
So Three Bro Sports was kind of founded as, I'll actually throw it back a little more. So throughout my high school days, I was actually the sport broadcaster for my high school's football, baseball, basketball team. And the one thing I wanted to do back in California was start my own podcast. And I just never had the opportunity until I moved out to Delaware. And once I got to my junior college, there was a podcasting class. And that's very rare for a community college to have. So when we get there, it's I don't know a single person at all. But these two guys turn to me, and they're like, hey, you into sports? I'm like, yeah. They're like, well, we kind of want to start this podcast. Do you want to be the host? Well, sure. And it kind of started off as that, where I went back and I heard the first episode, and it almost sounded as if we were trying to do like an infomercial of just sounding, or maybe an NPR skit of it being just so quiet, monotone, no energy. But as things started to grow, I think it was after our first couple episodes, we were thinking, man, this could really last. And it kept on going, and we even had you on. So, I mean, I think we're going places. But for TV Delmarva, I actually got an internship at ESPN 930 in Delaware. I was a co-host for another guy for his show, and ESPN actually shut that place down because the people who owned it, they closed it. So TV Delmarva kind of swooped in of, hey, we're really interested in your show. Would you guys like to come on? So I was still interning for him. And then one day, one of the guys heard that I have my own podcast, and he started listening to it, and he was really intrigued with it. And he comes up to me after the show privately saying, hey, we really like your show. Would you ever want to come on and have your own show with us? I'm like, oh my God, yeah, please sign me up. What do I got to do? I tell the guys, so I'm like 1,000 times more energetic and more excited than the guys are, because anything will get me excited. So I'm just like jumping up the wall saying we got our own TV show, and it's going really well as of right now. We're having a lot of great NBA reporters coming on. We're even having an MLB guy coming on in a few weeks. So, I mean, big things are coming.
Nice, man, nice. I've been listening, like I said, and you are the energy. I mean, the other two guys, they do a great job, but you are the energy, and you have a voice for it. For most people that are at that, when I was your age, I wanted to talk about sports. I love sports. Even when I get to go to family functions, family reunions, things like that, that's all I wanted to talk about. But I didn't know how to. When I say how, I didn't know. Let's say a podcast or a show, or let's say I get 15 minutes.
You're going random.
Exactly. I didn't know how to format anything. I didn't know how to change my voice, how to get more excited or get a little quieter at certain times. I didn't know any of that. And so listening to you, it's like, man, this young guy actually, he has a voice for it, but he actually has a good mind, and he knows when to turn it up, when to turn it down, when to get serious, when to get excited. And was that something that comes natural, or do you work at that?
So I think that was something that came a little more natural to me, of kind of having a different voice. But the one person I actually learned this from specifically was Grant Napier. He's the head voice of the Sacramento Kings ever since the Sacramento Kings came to Sacramento from Kansas City. So I actually messaged him on Twitter a long time ago, same way I messaged you about my podcast, kind of promoting. And I messaged him saying, hey, I'm a sports broadcaster for local high school. We just got top 5 in the nation for broadcasting. I'd love to ask a few questions for you, if possible. And he replies back, hey, why don't you just come on air with me? Why don't you and your partner come to the studio? We'll talk. And I remember he sat us down in this big lounge, and there's like a Keith Urban signed guitar sitting right in front of us, just kind of just nonchalantly. And he's like, all right, well, here's a few things that you really need to do. You need to make sure you have the right voice for it. When things get up, you got to have that voice. You got to bring everybody involved, like everybody entertained to what's going on. And you need to be the voice of enthusiasm for those fans. And that did stick to me, but at the time I was a color announcer. I wasn't play-by-play just yet. So I thought about it. I'm like, yeah, that does work. But then when we got into podcasting, it's a natural feeling. Once you get accustomed to who you're working with and you're having a good time, then you can tell your voice is starting to go up and down. It just feels right. And it's something that it just kind of comes with time. That's been my biggest takeaway.
You do a good job, man. I can say it over and over. You do a good
job.
Thank
you.
You're welcome. Grant Napier, I didn't know who he was. It was a game last season, and I do a good job of trying to know different broadcaster, play-by-play men, color commentators from different teams around the league, because your local guys, either radio or TV, they're just as good, if not better, than those that are national. It's just they like the local feel. They like the local vibe. They like to travel with the team instead of going from, let's say Brooklyn to Cleveland, then Cleveland to New York, and then New York to the other side of the country. They like just traveling or staying with the team and following that instead of having 5 teams in 8 days. You have one team you know very, very well, and then probably a couple divisional teams that you can follow and things like that. But I remember, I think it was last year, I forget who the Kings are playing, but this video of him and Doug Christie went around and around and around the internet. It was
I think I know which one.
Bogdan Bogdanovic had I think he hit a game winner, and I just heard him say looking. I think he said, I believe his words were bogey for the win, and he held that thing out, and then he yelled Bogdan Bogdanovic. And then I think the video I saw is focusing on Grant Napier, Doug Christie. I watched Doug Christie when I was younger. So I'm watching, I'm like, how are these guys' chemistry going to be when they're talking? Now, is Doug Christie going to come in when he shouldn't? Is Grant Napier going to talk when a lot of play-by-play men would shut up and be quiet to let the moment take over? There was silence, but it was a perfect silence. Similar to Tiger Woods, and you may have heard me mention it, Tiger Woods when he won the Masters recently. Jim Nantz shut up. He just said, hey, I'm not going to be talking right now. There's nothing I can say that can amplify the moment. I'm just going to shut up. And Grant Napier, I remember at one point he said something, and then I think there was a hand motion or something where Doug Christie ended up saying something else.
Cementing that's what Grant taught me. That's what Grant was teaching me of you have to be quiet in those big moments. Let the fans enjoy it. You lead them up to it, but once that happens, you have to be quiet. And it was kind of funny you were talking about the perfect silence. When Doug Christie took over as color announcer, I don't ever mean to bash anybody, but Doug had a big problem of he would interrupt Grant on a big play, and he'd go, oh, he's like screaming it into the mic, and a lot of Kings fans were getting on him for it. And I remember Grant was saying, look, I'll talk to him about that. He actually replied to a couple of tweets saying, look, I understand what you guys are talking about, understand it, that it's just the love for the game that he's having, but he's definitely – I mean, after Jerry Reynolds, who was the announcer with Grant for over a decade, they had the best chemistry of Jerry Reynolds, the French-look Indiana boy. He was just everything to the Kings. And now he has his own podcast as well. I have to listen to every episode. He's like a national treasure. But yeah, I'm sorry to interrupt you. I had to throw that out because that was one of the big points that Grant actually was telling us of. You got to have hand signals, and when that big moment happens, be quiet.
No, man, you're fine. You're perfectly fine. Speaking of Doug Christie and the way that he kind of just talked too much when he first started. Locally here in Indianapolis, it's Chris Denary, the play-by-play man. He used to do stuff for Butler University. He did stuff for the Indiana Fever in the WNBA as well. Quinn Buckner used to play for the Indiana Hoosiers. He was on the undefeated team that they had back in, I believe, 76. Quinn Buckner is known, and one of the pet peeves of myself and other people that I went to school with that talk on Twitter about the Pacers, Quinn Buckner talks way too much. And sometimes he talks, and what he's saying makes absolutely no sense. But he just talks and talks. I'm like, man, be quiet. And for example, there was a Pacers game recently. It was a big moment. I forget if it was a dunk, a shot, or something. But Chris Denary, the play-by-play man, was setting it up, talking about what happened, and then all of a sudden capitalized on the big moment. Quinn Buckner, his voice projects very well, kind of like mine, and his voice went over top of Chris Denary, the play-by-play man, and it not just annoyed me, it annoyed me to the point where I'm like, this guy, a change needs to be made. It's interesting. When I was younger, Clark Kellogg used to do color commentary for the Pacers. Then he got big and CBS whipped him up away from Indiana. And then I don't know if there was a guy in between Clark Kellogg and Quinn Buckner or not, but there's a drastic difference. You can see Clark Kellogg during the NCAA tournament, phenomenal. College basketball, phenomenal. But he's worked at it and realized, like, there's time for me to talk, there's time for me not to talk. Quinn Buckner is a guy that many Pacers fans have been upset about. He talks too much. He just keeps talking. And then Chris Denary he wants to do his job. Chris Denary doesn't complain. He's a professional. He does what's right of him to do. But just interesting you brought all of that together. This weekend, transferring away from podcasting, play-by-play, you and I could talk about this for hours, trust me, because I study this stuff all the time. Have you ever thought about making your own podcast? It seems like that's the in thing right now. Well, do I have the people for you? Anchor is a one-stop shop for recording, hosting, and distributing your podcast. Best of all, it's 100% free and extremely easy to use. And now, Anchor will match with great sponsors who want to advertise on your podcast. That means you can get paid for podcasting right away. To get started, go to anchor.fm/start. Once again, that's anchor.fm/start. There's a game this weekend. The Chiefs and the 49ers. You've already talked about one of your connection with the Kings being your team. Before this season, I'll tell you where I was before the season. I forget, you may have not heard this. Before this season, the 49ers were not a team that I expected to be this good at all. I thought they would be probably third or fourth in the division, a bottom feeder. Jimmy G, I knew he had the talent to be good. I didn't know if he would actually be good and if he would be good this year and if he would be good to win this many games. I mean, it was almost to the point this season, 12-3 at the time, last game of the regular season against the Seahawks. The 49ers were going to be either the first seed or the fifth seed in the playoffs, with the slim chance of getting a home game, because if you're a fifth seed, there's a rare chance you're playing the sixth seed in the playoffs. Before this season, what were your expectations for this 49ers team, and then what were your thoughts throughout the season as they started to win what seemed like every week?
Okay, so I'll throw it out here as my teams are the 49ers, Sacramento Kings, and Los Angeles Angels. So that's a trifection of depression. That's what I like to call it, as I'm not used to watching a winning product. So when the season first started, when we were in the preseason, or even before that, throughout training camps, I believe this Niner team could have been 9-7 or 10-6 and sneak into the wild card. Because if you have a solid defense, that can get you pretty far. And I thought that the Niners had a lot of great building pieces, adding a generational talent, in my opinion. And Nick Bosa is great. Quan Alexander added in. You also have DeForest Buckner. Like, you knew that the front seven was going to be solid, and also Fred Warner. I can't forget about him for BYU. I personally didn't think that it would be this elite. I at least had them being pretty well. Garoppolo would be maybe a little below average, just because you need 2 years to come back from torn ACL injury. The first year back shouldn't be the indicator of how good is this player. Wait for the second year when they're fully comfortable running around, because you could tell at the beginning of the season, as the season progressed, that Garoppolo looked really – he didn't want to run at all. He was a little afraid of, I think, a little PTSD of this torn ACL. I would too. But as the year started to go on, I was surprised. I kept thinking to myself, oh, this feels weird. I'm not used to a winning team. They go 3-0, but the game that had me completely certain that this team was legit was their win against the Carolina Panthers. Now, a lot of listeners could say, well, the Panthers, they didn't even get close to the playoffs. Yeah, you're right. But they were 5-2, if I'm not mistaken, at the time, or 5-3, and they were on fire. Kyle Allen did not throw a single interception in his first 5 games, or no, 6. He was 5-1 at quarterback at the time. And for this Panthers team to get absolutely pummeled was the first time where I realized, you know what, this team actually could be legit. And they kept growing on me more and more. And personally, I didn't believe the 49ers were going to the Super Bowl. I really did not. But they have proved to me that they can be a team to go there, even win it all, and possibly replicate the success for multiple seasons.
Yeah, this 49ers team, I say special, and I don't mean special as like, oh, it's like an all-timer. I don't like saying that kind of stuff in the moment. It's very, very rare. I kind of was, going back to college football, that's kind of where my heart is. I love college football. Before the Ohio State and Clemson game earlier this year, I made a comment saying this game has the makings of what could be an all-timer. And normally I don't like doing that, but the buzz and the lead up and what those two teams have on the field, coaching and players, it sure seemed like that. This team is special because they kind of put the pieces together overnight. I think your record was 4-12 last year. Am I correct with that?
Yes, but also let's remember that there was a lot of key injuries throughout that year, and there was still promising figures throughout the team. I mean, you did have a DeForest Buckner, the Eric Armstead, who was solid at the time. Richard Sherman was amazing, but there was just a lot of other pieces of guys who just couldn't stay healthy. I don't think our starting safeties played together for more than maybe 5 games in total. I mean, they kept going down left and right. I mean, there was a lot of injuries on the defensive end. But I just think Nick Bosa solidifying it has been the big reason for this turnaround.
Yeah, man, those Bosa boys, they're different. I was able to watch both of them at Ohio State. I wasn't happy when Nick left early because of his injury, but I understood it. And then I see him leaving early was actually a good thing for him because he came in and was just hitting the ground running and was just a spark that was needed for that team. And the team just kept rolling and rolling and rolling. Like you mentioned, that Panthers game, that may have been the cementing point where saying, hey, this team is going to be good, very good, better than advertised. There's a guy that they're going up against on Sunday that is as advertised every week, if not better. What are your expectations for Patrick Mahomes this weekend going against that crazy defense that the 49ers have?
You know what? This may sound a little outlandish. I actually think Mahomes is going to struggle. I understand you have a guy like Tyreek Hill and you have Travis Kelce, Hardman, Sammy Watkins. I get that. But with the amount of pressure that this 49er defense creates, I'm actually really concerned about for Mahomes. I understand his mobile ability. I think he'll still have a solid game, but I don't think he's going to be lighting the world on fire. It's going to be an average stat line, maybe 280, 2 touchdowns, 1 interception, maybe 2 interceptions, because this 49er defense is ferocious. I don't know any other team that could be able to withhold from them. But the only problem that I do see with that type of Niners defense, I know we'll talk about the Niners in a second, but the biggest thing is kind of how the defense is really talent-led in the first half, but once adjustments are made, it's fair game. So that's where Mahomes could really make his mark. But I definitely see Richard Sherman going up against Hill, and I definitely could see Sherman having the upper hand. And I'm just curious about Kelce, personally as a 49ers fan, but I think they'll be okay. I don't think they're going to be as great as everybody imagines them to be.
I have big expectations for Patrick Mahomes this weekend unless, and I say this because it's a personal thing with me, if you guys can find a way to do what you guys can to do what the Colts did against the Chiefs earlier this year in primetime, you guys will win probably by 2 touchdowns. What the Colts did that night was memorable because that was a different type of game. Patrick Mahomes had already been dinged up that season early in the year. And then all of a sudden, when he got hit again and the Colts were the more physical team, it's almost like, okay, Patrick Mahomes, he's great, but if he's not mobile, then the game is over, basically. Now, it was a one-possession game at the end of the game, but if you watch that game, you realize the Colts were dominant, they were more physical, and the Chiefs had no answer. Do you think the Chiefs have an answer for the front four of the 49ers?
Personally, I don't. I actually don't. I don't mean to throw my bias into that, but when you're having a guy as athletic as Nick Bosa running up against Mahomes, like if you're Patrick Mahomes, you're already thinking about Nick Bosa. Well, you also forgot about Eric Armstead, who has over 10 sacks this year. You're forgetting about DeForest Buckner, one of the craziest forces out there. Oh, Quan Alexander wants to blitz. Oh, you don't want to go against him. He's one of the more hard-hitting linebackers in the NFL. I mean, the group of guys that this Niners defense have, I mean, even Solomon Thomas, you could throw him in there. He's been pretty solid as well. I really believe that this Saints offense could struggle. I really do. I mean, if we're going to look at the numbers, they're for pass protection, their offensive line, the Kansas City, they're 28th. On run, 21. Like, that right there is showing me their offensive line has a lot of flaws, and the Niners defense could easily be able to exploit that as the physical style of play that they are.
Yeah, but I'm going to play devil's advocate real quick. I think you're going to I think you're built for this. Just hearing you and how you talk already and listening to your podcast. Okay, you say that their pass protection's not the best. Their run blocking, okay, we get the numbers. We see all the numbers. Sometimes numbers don't tell the entire story. Because as I see right here, despite everything you said, and Patrick Mahomes did get injured, he still threw for over 4,000 yards this year and missed 2 games. He's crazy in the pocket. His escapability is insane. So I'm gonna play a scenario for you. And I mentioned this on your podcast when I was on there. I think Brett may have been the first one that mentioned it, but I kind of elaborated on it. That run, I think it was late in the second quarter, Chiefs and Titans AFC Championship game. Patrick Mahomes drops back. The Titans do a phenomenal job of pass coverage and locking everybody up. Literally, every person. I don't have a timer on how long Mahomes had the ball in the backfield before he started to move up, but I venture was off getting to the point of 3 to 4 seconds. So he has the ball looking. Grant Napier style, but I'm not using the voice. You're looking, dropping back, but then he's looking and he comes forward, slides to his left, and actually eludes 2 tacklers. And we all remember the play. Tight ropes the sidelines. And once again, your buddy mentioned it. Nobody wanted to tackle him. He made one guy miss and he lowered his shoulder, and then he eventually went to the end zone. Patrick Mahomes, Aaron Rodgers-esque, but a little bit but better, being able to look and react, look and then move in the pocket. Let's just say you guys get a little pressure up the middle, or he has to move around. How in the world will you guys be able to counterattack his mobility in the pocket?
Okay, well, if we're going to look at Tennessee, if we're going to look at their defensive side, I personally don't feel as if Tennessee's defensive side is as athletic as the 49ers are. I mean, their big game is all about speed. And even on the defensive end as well, you're looking at Nick Bosa. I mean, that dude looks like he could be running like a tight end at times. He looks really solid. And I think that's a strength that the Niners have of trying to be able to contain him. But the 49ers struggle. I'll play devil's advocate as well. The 49ers' biggest struggle has been against super athletic quarterbacks like the Kyler Murrays. He basically could carve up a 49ers defense, but I don't think Mahomes is going to be wanting to run as much throughout this game. I mean, if he's going to he may have to if the pocket continues to collapse. Sorry, I'm spewing out my words. But I definitely see Mahomes. He's going to be trying to run, but I think the 49ers got it covered.
Got you. Let's go with the Chiefs right now. Chiefs offense is scary for numerous reasons. They have speed. They have one of the best tight ends in the NFL, one of the best quarterbacks in the NFL, and it seems like a lot of people can't figure them out, even to the point where in the Titan AFC Championship game, I think they were down 10-0, then they scored, then the Titans scored again, and in my mind, maybe yours as well, in my mind, I'm thinking, here we go again. It's a repeat of what happened in the divisional round. The Chiefs and Texans, Texans got up to a lead, then all of a sudden the Chiefs are going to Chiefs are going to fight back. Well, they did fight back, but wasn't like the Titans were just going to we're up 10 points. Let's fall asleep now and let Patrick Mahomes do whatever he wants to do. Let's say that, going back to the divisional round, let's say that Chiefs offense gets hot, very, very hot, 20 points in, let's say 10 minutes, that kind of hot. How do you think the 49ers defense, because we know the Chiefs offense can get hot in the blink of an eye, drop of a hat, whatever analogy you want to use to describe it, it can happen. How do you think the Chiefs offense, if they get hot, will be stopped or slowed down by the 49ers?
You know what? If the Chiefs can actually get guns a-blazing at one point, I don't think there is a way for the 49ers to stop them. This is an Andy Reid-led offense. And I know I'm saying that I don't personally think that they're actually going to the offense will be hot, but I'm saying the scenario if they are, yeah, there's no chance the 49ers will be able to pull this off. No matter what schemes you do, you could be as physical as possible. It's going to be impossible. I really do think so, because if you're going to start protecting up against the pass, well, just let's get at least LaShawn McCoy back in. Damian Williams has been torching things out. Like, this team they have all the right pieces. But it's going to be, how does this team early on set the tone? Now I'm talking for the Niners. I understand that they did come back from the 24-0 lead, but it almost felt as if Houston let off the gas big time. They wanted Kansas City to get a little bit of momentum coming in. Yeah, that's how I felt. And I think the 49ers, it's 64 minutes. It really is. Play it like it's your last. That's the only way if they want to be successful, because if we're going to look at the numbers, City first and third down percentage. They're fifth and fourth down percentage. Like, those are impeccable numbers. I know the 49ers are top 5 in those as well. But still, like, when this team is hot and Andy Reid is on it, there's almost no way to stop this team.
No, there's not. There's not, because you think about it. If Tyreek Hill gets hot, it opens space for Travis Kelce. But if you focus on Travis Kelce or Tyreek Hill, you still have Sammy Watkins. And sometimes I forget he's even on the team. I don't know how, but I'm like, how in the world do they have all these weapons? But Andy Reid, he finds a way to utilize the people that he has, and he does it better at times than anybody else in the league. Give me your X factor for the 49ers for the upcoming game.
The X factor is going to be George Kittle. I'm not trying to just go with the big name on this, but his blocking ability is one of the biggest things on the offensive side. I'll give you one on offense and one on defense. So I'm Kittle on the offensive side because of how great he's been with run blocking. I mean, Raheem Mostert wouldn't have been as dominant if it wasn't for George Kittle. And the biggest thing I love about Kittle is he only had one reception that whole game. It was loving every second of it. He's a team player. He loves to block. I remember seeing a little documentary by NBC about him, saying that his dad, he was his football coach, and basically was saying, blocking is like the coolest thing out there. So everybody on the team wanted to do it. So he always grew up wanting to be a blocker. And his just love for the game, the mindset for Kittle that could ever tackle. And I actually think he believes it. We could look at that New Orleans Saints game where he was being held, it was a face mask for about 20 yards, and he's not even going to the ground, and it doesn't look like there's any sign of him stopping. George Kittle is nuts, but I could go on about Kittle forever. But on the defensive end, it's going to be Quan Alexander. I know I'm kind of going with the big name again, but when Quan Alexander returned against Minnesota, you must have saw, all the viewers, even myself, had to have seen a different 49ers defense of an energized, revitalized. Like, once Quan Alexander went down, the Niners defense almost went into the crapshoot. They were scaring me. As the pass rush wasn't looking as great, everybody was getting open. But this defense has turned everything around in the playoffs since Quan Alexander's been back. He has been one of the best signings that we've had, and one of the best middle linebackers we've seen since, not Devar Bowman, but Patrick Willis. I really think so. I know it's only 1 year, but the hot boys idea that he has, I know it's kind of stolen from Dallas, but the Niners will say it's their own. Who cares? But the way that he has brought this team together on a defensive end has been just a breath of fresh air to me personally.
Okay. I'm looking forward to a couple people one in particular. I'll just take one. Jimmy Garoppolo. Because I think there will be a point in this game that he's going to be able to utilize his arm and show off the talent that he has. I'm not a person that is one that says, Jimmy G's a fraud, or Jimmy G is not that good, or he's winning in spite of who he is. He's winning because everybody else around him is great. I'm not a guy saying that. I think Jimmy Garoppolo is a good quarterback. I think he's a starting quarterback in this league. And I think he's going to continually be a leader in this league. And I think there's a direct correlation to him being drafted by the New England Patriots. Belichick doesn't really mess up with draft picks. Belichick doesn't really mess up with signings. So Belichick saying, yes, this guy is good. This guy's good enough to be on my team. He's gone. He's away from here now. Now, yes, they have Tom Brady. Tom Brady may or may not leave. That's a different story. But I do think at some point in this game, I'm looking for Jimmy Garoppolo to have to drop back. You guys can't run. I said you guys, you're a 49ers fan. But the 49ers can't run the ball. And Jimmy Garoppolo will have to be the man. Be the man to utilize his arm and use his mobility in the pocket to move the ball. Keeping with X factors, the Chiefs. Just give me one this time. Who is your X factor for the Chiefs in this game?
Oh, it's Travis Kelce. I mean, like what we were talking about earlier, if you start getting Travis Kelce open more, that's going to free up the whole field for Tyreek Hill, for Samuel Watkins, for Hardman. I mean, that's just an easy no-brainer right there. If Kelce gets hot, then this team is going to be almost unstoppable, and it gives endless opportunities for Patrick Mahomes.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm going on the defensive side this time. I like defense a lot. I'm more of a defensive guy than an offensive guy. I'm also more of a O-line, D-line guy than skill positions. But this time I'm going with the defensive back, Tyrann Mathieu. Joker, Rover.
I would have gone him as well.
Do whatever you want to call that position. The Troy Polamalu style of safety, where basically you can do whatever you want to. You can line up deep, 20 yards away from the line of scrimmage. You can line up right in between the D end and the D tackle. It don't matter what you want to do. You have freedom to utilize your brain to do whatever you feel you're reading and seeing and reacting to on the field. He can cause so much havoc in this game that I don't think a lot of people would even. Some people are going to notice it and say, "Oh yeah, he's cool," but that Chiefs offense gets so much talk that sometimes Tyrann Mathieu and what he does on the defense, even if his numbers don't show up in the stat sheet, it's huge. Because there are so many people. I'll go back I'd say about 10 years ago now. Bob Sanders. Bob Sanders was a guy, when he's on the field, he was a problem. You had to know where he was on the field every single play. And as a Colts fan, I loved him because when he's out there, no matter what team we were playing, no matter who the quarterback was, no matter who the coach was or running back, it didn't really matter. No matter who the receivers were, you had to know where Bob Sanders was at all times. And I remember very, very well the Super Bowl that the Colts won. They beat the Bears. Bob Sanders came right through the hole in the middle of the O-line, read the play perfectly, and then popped. I think it was Cedric Benson, forced a fumble on Cedric Benson during that play. I think Tyrann Mathieu in this game will have a great impact. Now, I'm not saying he's going to have 10, 12 tackles. I'm not saying that. I think a lot of his impact will not be in the stat sheet on this game. You mentioned Tyrann Mathieu. I'll give you one more thing before we get to the last things I have for today. What impact do you think he could have in this game?
No, I fully agree with you on that. I mean, Mathieu, he's around that Troy Polamalu-esque, and I'll agree with that. But, I mean, his presence out there, I think Frank Clark is another guy you have to give out there as well. If you could be able to slow down Emmanuel Sanders, that's kind of when everything opens up for a Kansas City defense, personally. But, yeah. I mean, it's going to be a tough battle. I really will be. This isn't like former games where I feel you kind of knew who was going to win it already. I mean, this one could go either way. It's the battle of the offenses.
It really could. It really could. I got 9 quick questions before we get out of here. Give me your first thought that you hear when you hear the comment or the question. And honestly, I'm going to tell you this right. I don't know if I've ever mentioned this on the podcast. This was supposed to be 10. My dad was my first guest on the podcast, and I was trying to do 10 with every single guest. And then all of a sudden, I looked out at my paper, and I accidentally asked my dad a question that was in the last set too early. So I crossed it off and I just did 9. And then I'm a creature of habit, so the 9 has stuck for every single guest I've had after that. But 9 quick ones before we get out of here. I enjoy this. You're very good. How old are you? I know how old you are, but tell the people how old you are.
I'm actually 18 years old. I know it seems a little outlandish. I mean, even when people actually see me at work, I always kind of like to play the game. How old do you think I am? 22, 23? No, I'm actually 18. No, stop lying to me. Come on. No, knock it off. So it's a fun game to play at work, especially with new people.
Oh, it is 100%. 100%. And you're very, very good. And I think the tutelage and the advice you got from Grant Napier, it shows. It shows while you're hosting, while you're on with me. It shows very, very well. Just the sit down one-on-one talk you got with the professional. First of 9 before we close this thing out. What do you enjoy most about podcasting? Just give me the first quick thought that enters your head.
Oh boy. Okay. Crap. Enjoyment.
Favorite sports memory.
Tyreek Evans. I know it's more than one word.
That's your favorite sports memory? Not player, memory.
Tyreek Evans. Okay, so Tyreek Evans' rookie season. Favorite memory in total. Grant Napier.
Okay. Describe your best. These two kind of go together. Best sports memory. You could kind of couple that with favorite. You mentioned Grant Napier, but also mentioned Tyreek Evans. What was your best sports memory? You can elaborate a little bit.
My best sports memory has to have been Yeah, it was Tyreek Evans, his second year in the NBA, his half-court buzzer beater against the Memphis Grizzlies was the only time I can remember jumping off my bed wanting to scream in a sports game. And maybe it'll be happening next week. Who knows?
Dude, okay, if it happens next week, I want video of it on Twitter. Don't send it to me directly. I want it on Twitter for the world to see.
Three Bro Sports on Twitter. I'll definitely do it. If Three Bro Sports TV 1 on Twitter. Sorry, I made a little mix-up.
Yeah, you got to get it correct. A place you want to go but have never been.
Bali.
Favorite vacation spot.
Palm Springs, California.
It sounds beautiful. What's it like doing a podcast with your friends?
Oh my! I mean, Brett and Calvin were actually the first friends I made when I moved out here. It was kind of tough because going into college, nobody really wants to make friends. It's kind of get your education and leave. But those two being my first friends I've made out here, it's kind of a special bond. I enjoy their sports IQ and the conversations we'll have. So it's been all around just amazing.
I got a couple. Three more. The next two are to kind of coupled together. Will the Kings ever win an NBA title?
Oh, Jay, you're hitting the hard questions. No.
No?
As much as I would love to see this happen, I don't think it will. I'll see a playoff berth. I don't see a championship. And I'll just tell you this right now. I understand how the city of Philadelphia was when they beat the Patriots for the Super Bowl, but that's going to be nothing compared to when the Sacramento Kings do win theirs, okay? If they do. Personally, I don't see it, but if the Kings do, the city of Sacramento may actually burn down in flames of excitement. These fans are the most dedicated people I've ever met, and that's why I'm fully dedicated too. I bought into it. They deserve more. They all deserve more than what we're getting.
Another sports team that you've already mentioned, the Angels. Do you think you'll be able to live to see the Angels win a World Series?
Oh, definitely, yes. And I actually think that could be coming soon. I mean, with this Angels core, Anthony Rendon, Mike Trout, Shohei Ohtani, and they're all in their prime. I get if you can add a couple more pitching pieces, Joe Madden at manager, I actually think that there is a good chance of doing so because we look at former teams. We're looking at the Kansas City Royals of 2014. Nobody saw them coming through. They just steamrolled the MLB. I mean, the Giants of 2014, they didn't look like they were going to go back. I mean, there's so many different teams. The Mets of 2015, it was the one-year wonder. Definitely the Angels have a chance. Baseball's a different sport when it comes to that. At any given night, things can change.
100%. 100%. Last question I have for you, going to your career, list three of them. What are three goals you have for your career as a broadcaster?
One would definitely have to be to get to interview either a former NBA, maybe a player or even a great. The second would be to have my own radio show, maybe with ESPN, but I want it with a big network, so it's something I could be able to live off of. And that would just be spectacular for me, just getting to say, yeah, I work for SiriusXM or ESPN or CBS or Fox Sports, either one of them. That would just mean the world to me. And third, if possible, I'd actually like to become a sports broadcaster again. I haven't done it in over a year, but I'd love the opportunity to get back out there because let's just say you're with this professional team, you get to build a community with fans, and you get to interact with everybody. People know who you are. I mean, that's just all I could really ever ask for, is just to be a part of a community where everybody wants to talk. Everybody wants to ask questions. You get to have these great conversations with people you don't even know off the streets, and they feel like they know you, and you feel like you know them as well by the way that they talk.
One last thing before you go. Spend some time advertising, talking about your podcast, tell people where they can find it, talk about TV Delmarva, where people can watch that, and also where they can find you on social media.
Oh, boy. Okay, let's get this going. All right, so for our podcast, Three Bros Sports, you could find us on Anchor, Spotify, Apple, Google. We're even working to iHeartRadio, Stitcher, Radio Public, any place that Jay has his podcast up. Guarantee you we have it up there as well. We even have our own YouTube channel for the podcast, Three Bros Sports. For TV Delmarva, every single Saturday, 1 p.m. Eastern, we're on tvdelmarva.com. Watch live. We're right there. Even if you can't watch it that day, we're on YouTube again of TV Delmarva. It'll be up there a couple hours after. Also, for our social medias, we're on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, Three Bros Sports TV. Twitter, Three Bros Sports TV. One, because we're number one for the Three Bros Sports. That's our mindset. And, yeah, that's actually all I have. I was thinking about even making a MySpace just for the kicks. I would like to do it just to see if maybe there's a couple people out there that haven't found out about us just yet. I'd like to be on all platforms.
Dude, I love your creativity. It's a way to, you got to utilize every avenue that you have to get the news out there, and I really like that. Connor, I appreciate it.
Yeah, so Jay, what's your MySpace?
I don't know, man. I haven't used MySpace in years. I'll make one up tonight and send it to you on Twitter. I'll do that for
you. Sounds perfect.
Connor, man, I appreciate it. I really appreciate you coming on. I'm going to do this again sometime down the road, a few months out. We'll figure out a time to have you come back on and join me again. I really appreciate it. I really do.
Man, thank you so much for having me on. I love getting to listen to your show. I mean, I can always listen to mine and Bill Simmons, but I like to get that third perspective of just a solo podcast, and I really enjoy what you're bringing out there. So I just want to at least give you a little kudos for that. So thank you just so much for having me on. I can't wait to be back soon. Can't wait to have you back on Three Bros Sports, either the podcast or TV show. We'll figure that out.
We will. Meet myself and Bill Simmons in the same context for a good reason. I really appreciate that. Never thought I would see that in my lifetime, but I really appreciate
it. Hey, you're welcome.
And that's all she wrote. Once again, I want to thank Connor for coming on and joining me. If you haven't listened to when I was a guest on his episode, go ahead and go back and listen to that. Three Bro Sports podcast came out a week ago today, and we were recapping the AFC and NFC championship games, and we spent about 15 minutes with that. The first 15 minutes of the episode, you'll hear me, you'll hear myself, Calvin, Brett, and Connor, three college students, three guys that have a lot of fun with their podcast, just recapping the AFC and NFC championship games. Also, if you have not listened to episode number 61, I believe, episode number 60. Yeah, episode number 60 with Keith Potter of the Next Guy Up podcast. Go back and listen to that. Like I mentioned earlier, one of my friends said that's their new favorite episode, and I had fun. It was my most enjoyable conversation about baseball I have ever had in my life. Baseball is not my favorite sport, but you could not tell that while Keith and I were talking. Go back and listen to that if you have not checked it out just yet. One thing this year, now we're going to continue to have more guests on. Continue to line more people up, because I feel like with the podcast, yes, podcasts are great, but guests add a different angle, add a different aspect to podcasts that just enhance the entire podcast experience and make the show even better than it already is. So we're going to continue to have more guests. Try to have them weekly. If not weekly, we'll have them every other week, but we'll continue to have more guests and have more people on to have more ideas and just make the podcast better and better and better. Thank you for listening to another episode of the Jay Stevens Podcast. As always, you can follow me on Twitter at Dr_J25. Once again, that is at Dr_JAY, the number 2 and the number 5. Remember to always subscribe, rate, and review. It's a great way for people that are searching for new podcasts to listen to come across this one. Then remember to always get the word out about the podcast via word of mouth. The things that we enjoy in life, we are more willing and somewhat wired to tell other people about. So no matter if this was your first episode or if you have been listening since episode 1, be sure to let people know about the podcast. This has been episode 62 of the Jay Stevens Podcast. I'll see you next time.